Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kare, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development Maharashtra. It's our first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development, Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. I especially extend a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. I especially extend a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. I especially extend a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kare, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's our first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. I especially extend a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kare, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. I especially extend a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. I especially extend a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. I especially extend a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's the first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. I especially very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's our first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's our first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's our first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's our first council meeting. Good morning, everyone. Meeting. Especially a very warm welcome to Srimati Aditi Kari, the Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development in Maharashtra. It's our first council meeting.
In F1, technology moves fast, really fast. That's why they need a technology partner that innovates at the speed of the world's fastest sport. From AR to AI PC to IT infrastructure and services, Lenovo is driving F1 to a faster future for all.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
Well, let's welcome in some technical perspective now. Atul Suri is the market master today. He's CEO Marathon Trends PMS. He's joining us now on the program. Atul, good morning. Great to have you with us here on CNBC TV 18. Prashant here. Where are we now, Atul, in terms of the market picture? This seasonality going into the election has been talked about widely. It's well advertised. So are we entering a bit of a sideways, even corrective phase for global markets, US especially? And if the answer to that is yes, what does that mean for India here? Because so far, not very much has mattered. I mean, we've continued our up move.
Yeah, I know that we are, speaking on a day when markets are down globally. So obviously the mood and questioning is different. But it's nice to take a step back and, if you look at markets in a little bigger time frame with a broader brushstroke, essentially there are four global asset classes, and I'll cover each one of them to understand where we are. The first is global equities. Again, barring yesterday's move, global markets are at lifetime highs. It's not just India, but even if you find the US is nudging there, a lot of global markets are at lifetime highs. So a 1% move or 2% really doesn't say much. So the first thing is that the quadrant that we like to focus on, which is global equities, they are globally pushing towards lifetime highs. Number two is commodities. If you look at commodities, it was a very big concern. Inflation was a very big concern in 2021, 22, 23. And if you find that even commodity prices are much softer than where they were 2 years ago. So that whole issue of inflation, which was, dominating us, also comes under the lid. The third asset class, which I think is very important and relevant, is US bond yields. And you'll find that there is been a decline in US bond yields. And going ahead, there is a feeling that the Fed is going to cut. And fourth is currencies. If you look at the US dollar, you look at the DXY, which is around 100. So what really happens is, Prashant, dare I say, on a day when the markets are down, that actually most of the places that the right thing is at the right place. So all the quadrants are actually behaving out pretty good on a larger or a macro scale. Now, the issue that comes up is yes, there can be volatility in the short run. September is seasonally known to be a volatile month. And for that, I think it is going to be a reality. We will have to live with it. But as far as the bigger picture goes, the four asset classes that I mentioned, and there is a lot of correlation or overlap that happens. As I said, I'm not speaking for one day or 1 week or 1 month. But if you look at the bigger macros, dare I say the world has enjoyed a Goldilocks. In that sense of the term, Goldilocks is when most things are where they ought to be. Yes, it will never be perfect alignment at all points in times. Things will swing, just as inflation dominated and recession fears are there. But overall, I don't think there are any very, very big issues. The point where I would be concerned as far as markets go, whether it's globally or India, would be that if we break the August lows. Remember, August was a very volatile month when you had a yen carry trade issue. And again, there was some data and there's a fear of a recession. So US had corrected almost 8.5, 9%. Japan was much sharper. India corrected about 4 to 5%. So for me, the reference point for this volatility or for the month is all is well till we don't break August lows. Yes, if we break August lows, then we need to get back to the drawing board and reconsider things. So yes, volatility is there. September has been historically volatile, but the bigger picture, the bigger asset class plays seem okay to me.
And that's very well explained, all the four quadrants as you put it, Atul. But would you want to put odds to it? What's the chance? What's the likelihood of that happening? The getting back to the August lows at some point over the next couple of months?
I, for one, would give it a higher probability that we'll break out on the upside. Yes, volatility will remain and it will give us panic. But I do think that global markets have a good 5 to 7% or maybe 8 to 10% higher from where we are. And that goes for India also. So I do think that breakouts were made earlier. Those targets have yet to be achieved. The journey can never be linear. It can never be a straight line. It has to be volatile. And what we are seeing is part of that volatility. So I think it's something you will have to live with. What I'm noticing, Prashant, and which is more relevant, is that in the last 2 months or so, more so, I would say post elections, the behavior of sectorial churn is very evident to me in India. And I think for me, I'm not taking cash calls, but for me as an investor, as a portfolio manager, what is changing is that the sector or themes that were leading the market, I feel are changing. And that may be a time to recalibrate and move some things around.
I was just going to come to that. Atul, this is really interesting. I keep going back to your line, right? The trend is your friend until it bends, and it's not bending from what you're saying. We're not at the point of bend, at least as of now. You're saying probably higher chances of a breakout on the upside than on the downside. So now with the overall market context quite clear to us, let's talk about the changes that one may need to make to their portfolio in here. I mean, it's been all about capex stocks, manufacturing, defense, railways, all of that. Do you see anything changing there? And then we've had a lot of false starts on things like large banks or even FMCG. Every day every time there's a scare in the market, we see some of these FMCG names do well, and then they fall by the wayside again. Any changes that you forecast here?
Yeah, so that's exactly the point I was talking to earlier. That in the last 2 to 3 months, what I find is that certain sectors or themes that dominated the markets for 2 years, 3 years have started underperforming, and some sectors have really taken the bull by the horn. So let me name them. I feel that the sectors there are three sectors that really stand out to me, which have done very well. One is pharma. I think pharma is one sector which has been pretty much ignored by the market. It's been laid by the wayside, but there are a lot of pharma stocks, and it's a very large sector in India. So I find that a lot of pharma stocks seem to be making new highs. And that's very, very positive because they are bucking the overall trend. The second sector, which again is a very important sector, probably the second largest sector in India, is IT. I also feel that I know that there is volatility today because of Nasdaq, etc. But on a larger theme, I see a lot of IT stocks breaking out, and I feel that that sector or that theme also is playing out very well. Again, something that has underperformed for the last 2 to 3 years. The third sector, which I find again interesting, is the whole consumption space, and this is where your FMCG and consumption stocks come in. So to some extent, I get a feeling that the market is little moving towards defensive, things like pharma and FMCG. And yes, to offset that, you realize that some of the industrials have started cooling off a wee bit. Mind you, they've had a 3-year bull market. So in the last 2 to 3 months, we are seeing industrials a little bit cool off. So I think that's where the point that comes for me as a fund manager is that do we need to change? Because the trend we feel in leadership is changing. And we are doing that because we find some of these places like pharma and IT giving us very, very good opportunities and breakouts. And this is evident also if you look at some sectors which are divided. The most important sector in India is banking, right? You'll find that PSU banks dominated the whole banking space. They were the sector, that are the stocks that did well for the last, again, 2 to 3 years. But you'll find that financials are actually doing very well. So a lot of money is moving into your broking stocks, AMC stocks, insurance stocks, etc. So I find that there's a shift that is happening even within sectors because we term banks and financials in one breath. But I feel banks are behaving separately and financials are behaving separately. So these are the kind of shifts that I'm seeing in the market in the last few months.
All right. Hi, Atul. Good morning and always good to see you in. Atul, just to clear the point on the headline index, that's a Nifty. If we hold those August lows, then we could possibly trend up 8 to 10% even from these levels?
I think so, because if memory serves me right, it was around 23,900,
yes.
Which should be around 5% or so lower from here. So I feel you will have to give the market some space to play.
जैसा हमने अपनी पिछली वीडियो में बताया था दोस्तों, 6 रुपए से 10 रुपए हो गया है स्टॉक, वो भी मात्र 5 दिनों में। मंडे को 6 रुपए 75 पैसे पे खुला था स्टॉक और फ्राइडे को क्लोजिंग हुआ है 10 रुपए 24 पैसे का। हमने अपनी पिछली वीडियो में बताया था कि ये स्टॉक रॉकेट होने वाला है एंड 7 रुपए 50 पैसे के ऊपर ब्रेकआउट है। ठीक वैसा ही हुआ, अब नहीं रुकेगा ये स्टॉक, सीधा यहां से 25 का टारगेट लगता है। हो भी क्यों ना, इस कंपनी के डेवलपमेंट ही ऐसे है। उम्मीद है जिसने भी फर्स्ट राउंड में इस स्टॉक को लिया होगा वो आज बड़े प्रॉफिट में बैठा होगा। होल्ड रखे, हमारा टारगेट 50 का अभी भी इंटेक्ट है। जो इन्वेस्टर्स ले नहीं पाए हैं वो इस लेवल्स पर भी ले सकते हैं। अभी तो कुछ भी तेजी नहीं आई है इस स्टॉक में। ये एक मल्टी बैगर होने जा रहा है। जी हाँ, ये BSE लिस्टेड कंपनी बनने जा रही है इस साल की सबसे बड़ी मल्टी बैगर ग्रीन एनर्जी का। नेक्स्ट वीक हम इस कंपनी की एक ऐसी न्यूज देने वाले हैं जो स्टॉक में और 4 चांद लगा देगी। तब तक आइए आपको पिछली वीडियो की एक झलक दिखला देते हैं। तो मिंट ने अपने ऑनलाइन न्यूज़पेपर्स में बताया, डीप डायमंड इंडिया Q1 रिजल्ट्स लाइव, प्रॉफिट राइजेस बाय 71.38% ईयर ऑन ईयर बेसिस। इस रिजल्ट्स के बाद हमारे रिसर्च ने इस स्टॉक की काफी गहराई तक एनालिसिस किया और क्या पाया इस रिसर्च में, आइए बताते हैं आपको इस वीडियो में। एक साल से ये कंपनी कंसोलिडेट कर रही है और कभी भी ब्रेकआउट आ सकता है इसमें। जैसे ही ₹7.50 के ऊपर चलेगा ये स्टॉक सीधा 25 के ऊपर ही रुकेगा। कंपनी के ऐसे ऐसे डेवलपमेंट्स भी हुए हैं पिछले एक साल में जो कंपनी को आने वाले समय में काफी अच्छे रेवेन्यूज देने वाले हैं। पहला, कंपनी ने एक ईवी कंपनी में स्टेक ले रखा है जिसका फायदा आने वाले समय में होने वाला है। ईवी व्हीकल्स का आज का मार्केट इंडिया में 7% का है, जो कि आने वाले 10 सालों में 25% होने की उम्मीद है।
साथियों, आज भारत में इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल का बाजार जितनी तेजी से बड़ा हो रहा है, कुछ साल पहले तक उसकी कल्पना भी नहीं होती थी। इलेक्ट्रिक वाहनों की एक बड़ी खासियत यह होती है, वो साइलेंट होते हैं। 2 पहिया हो या 4 पहिया, वो कोई शोर नहीं करते। ये साइलेंस केवल इसकी इंजीनियरिंग का ही नहीं, बल्कि ये देश में एक साइलेंट रिवॉल्यूशन।
भारत सरकार भी इसको काफी बढ़ावा दे रही है। दूसरा, एक ईवी के बाद कंपनी जोरों शोरों से प्रवेश कर रही है सोलर एंड हाइड्रोजन एनर्जी में। सोलर एनर्जी जिस पर भारत सरकार ने काफी सब्सिडी दे रखी है, आज एक बहुत बड़ा प्रॉफिटेबल सेक्टर बन गया है। कोई भी ग्रीन एनर्जी का स्टॉक के मार्केट कैप 1000 करोड़ से कम नहीं है। क्या आपको लगता है ये प्रोजेक्ट्स के चालू होते ही कंपनी का वैल्यूएशन 20 गुना हो नहीं जाएगा? ये सारी प्लानिंग कंपनी ने ऑलरेडी कर ली है। 14 अगस्त को आए अनाउंसमेंट में कंपनी ने 45 करोड़ का रेस करने की बात करी है। आप बीएससी के अनाउंसमेंट सेक्शंस में जाकर इसकी पुष्टि कर सकते हैं। लगभग 900 करोड़ का सोलर पार्क लेकर आने वाली है ये कंपनी। सालाना 90 से 100 करोड़ का मुनाफे की तैयारी हो रही है। जैसे ही ऑफिशियल अनाउंस होगा, हाथ नहीं आएगा ये स्टॉक। ₹5 के स्टॉप लॉस पर जितना लेना है ले सकते हो स्टॉक को। हमने ये भी सुना है कि इस प्रोजेक्ट्स को लंदन एंड मॉरिशस बेस्ड FIIs भी फंड कर रहे हैं। आपको मालूम ही होगा, एक मॉरिशस बेस्ड फंड हाउस ने इस कंपनी में ऑलरेडी स्टेक खरीद रखा है। आप बीएससी या गूगल की न्यूज से इसकी पुष्टि भी कर सकते हैं। दोस्तों, 6 से 7 रुपए के भाव में कोई नुकसान का सौदा नहीं है। ₹5 के स्टॉप लॉस पे जितना मर्जी है ले लो, पैसा तो बनेगा ही बनेगा। दोस्तों, ये 2 डेवलपमेंट्स ही काफी है इस स्टॉक को रॉकेट बनाने में। हमारे रिसर्च इंडिया की एक लीडिंग रिसर्च हाउस है जो काफी बारीकी से सबसे पहले इंफॉर्मेशन लेकर आती है, लेकिन फिर भी हम कहेंगे कि इन्वेस्ट करने से पहले अपने स्टॉक एडवाइजर की सलाह जरूर लें।
Oaksmith Style Studio.
Where your soul let it shine, fashion is state of mind. Every stitch, every seam, live your life, chase the dream.
Make a good look great with Oaksmith Style Studio.
Oaksmith. Beg it higher.
And as Prashant pointed out earlier, that seasonally September has been a volatile month, and one has to be prepared for that. But as I said, the key thing, Nigel, is in my view not going to be the market per se. It's going to be more the sectors and themes, because in these times of churns, what you will find is that new leadership emerges. And I feel that after 2 to 3 years of a secular trend, especially like the PSUs for that matter, you'll find that there could be a shift that is happening here.
Okay, all right. Got that out of the way. Personally, September is a good month for me, but I was just saying seasonally for the markets, it's not great. So we'll keep that aside. Let's focus on a couple of other trends then. Crude oil prices being lower, a good thing from an India market perspective. And we have a couple of sectors, themes that are doing well. Paints is doing well today because of the lower crude prices, and that's been a rank underperforming sector. So first, your view on crude oil prices. We're holding at around $73 per barrel, which none of the Nifty bulls are complaining. But where's it headed?
Yeah, so I think for Brent to actually come to around 70 would be a good place. 70 has historically been a very big support for Brent crude, and I think that Brent is heading there. Well, if it breaks that, then in fact I find sometimes that it may be in kind of a bit of a worry also, because if commodities crack big time, yes, it may feel good in the short run. Some stocks may benefit, but it may actually put a question mark on the overall health of the economy, because you need commodities for growth. You need commodities in a growing economy. If commodities crack, that clearly would imply that, the world is heading to a different scene where recession or underperformance in a lot of the other stocks would play out. So for me, commodities in a band, currency in a band is always a good idea. If it does too much, it always creates a problem. So as I said, I'm very happy that crude where it is, or even if it goes up to 70. So commodities as a whole, as I said, is something I watch very closely because it's very closely linked to inflation. And remember, the last 3 years have been dominated by inflation. Yes, we are coming out of the fear, but it shouldn't be that they even swing the other side. Because if they swing too far on the other side, it would imply that the demand for commodities is out, which would imply that there is a problem where recession could be coming. So, range bound commodities, range bound currencies is what I love.
Got it. Atul, do you think, globally as well, right? I mean, in the US, and you watch that market also pretty closely, we will, as you're saying, new leadership will emerge. We're at that point where that market also will do that. I'm asking because the outsized importance, right? 5 stocks, these large tech stocks, is about 30% of the S&P market cap.
In fact, Prashant,
the big,
it's
the
sorry,
big, the big,
sorry.
sorry,
In fact,
the big one.
it's all reduced to one stock, Nvidia.
And exactly. So I was coming to that. Nvidia, as of yesterday's 9.5 to yesterday's 9.5% cut, is if 20% is the cutoff for a bear market, it's down 23% from its June highs. So are we at that point in the US as well?
Nvidia went into a bear market last month also, and again it made a new high. So yeah, these 20% rules in stocks like Nvidia, 20% is good for an index level, but in stocks like Nvidia and some of these tech stocks, it's a matter of 1 week. So Nvidia is different. I mean, as I said, that I have never seen. We were talking about FANG stocks and Super 7, but I have never seen one stock actually dominate the market as much as, or the importance of one stock, which is Nvidia, because it affects the whole sector, the whole semiconductor space. Yeah, but then these are realities. You have to live with it, Prashant. At all points in time,
No,
there'll be
I
new
completely
names,
agree.
new
And
acronyms.
it's it has affected us well. It has helped, but the question is, it can hurt also, right? So I mean, any thoughts at all? I mean, if I don't know if you've looked at it closely or.
I have.
I mean, actually, if you look at the S&P chart or the Nvidia chart, I mean, I think it's the same. As you said, it's the same thing now.
Yeah, I know. It has a lot of domination, but as I said that, when a stock moves in that percentages, you have to give it that big ranges also. Like a 3%, 5%, 10%, Nvidia is no big deal because the stock also goes up 50, 70% in a few months. So I feel that that is not an issue. You'll have to look at that stock in its own way. But coming to the bigger question that as far as US goes, I feel that there is immense amount of breadth. The way some of the small caps have started doing well, the Russells, etc., also give you a lot of confidence. So I think that there's a lot more depth, a lot more strength in that market, in that economy. One day, I mean, is not doesn't end a bull market. I feel that the bull market has a lot of legs.
Okay, all right, Atul, appreciate you joining in. Thanks a lot for joining and giving us your view, and we'll keep that in mind. Trend is your friend till it doesn't bend. So we'll hold on to that thought, and looking forward to chatting up with you soon. Well, let's focus on
it bends. How do you know where it bends?
That you'll join us next time and tell us that, right?
That's the challenge.
Have a good day, Atul, and see you for a walk later in the evening sometime around in Bandra. Take care. Thanks a lot. Well, let's move on.
A sport that's fueled by data. Needs a technology solutions partner that knows how to harness it. Lenovo's AI PCs, servers, and services help F1 process millions of data points in real time, which supercharges the fan experience for all.
मन नहीं भरा यार, किसी और को धूल चटानी है। किले तक राइड करेगा? चल। रुक मत, चल तू, रुक मत,
रुक मत। सिर्फ कैस्ट्रॉल एक्टिव का बेहतरीन 3x प्रोटेक्शन रखे आपके इंजन को हमेशा फिट। कैस्ट्रॉल एक्टिव विद 3x प्रोटेक्शन।
Materially prosperous. per capita, India is just about stepping into the lower middle income category. Therefore, as we deliberate on preparing our financial system to support our economic aspirations, India can ill afford the financialization and its ramifications that afflict advanced societies. In other words, we cannot afford to let the tail wag the dog. In a paper that they wrote in 2012, Professors Stephen Secheti and Karubi wrote that the relationship between the financial sector and productivity was inverted U-shaped. Their interpretation was that because the financial sector competed with the rest of the economy for scarce resources, financial booms were not, in general, growth enhancing. Ensuring that the dog is always ahead of the tail entails having a proper policy approach to financial innovations and compensation in the financial sector. Both are interlinked. In 2012, in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, Professor Eric Posner of the University of Chicago proposed a financial products authority along the lines of the Federal Drug Administration in the United States for approving financial innovations. He hoped that such an authority would take a net benefit cost approach to financial innovations as the FDA does to drugs. The crucial test is whether a financial innovation, product or process, advances the efficiency and the effectiveness of the savings investment intermediation function of the capital markets. A close look at the financial or compensation incentives of those who propose or sponsor the innovation will also help decide whether the financial innovation is a net positive contributor to social and economic welfare in the country. In his landmark speech delivered in July 2008 in Manchester, Dr. Y.V. Reddy, the former Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, remarked, and I quote, "In particular, it may be argued that the incentive frameworks for financial intermediaries appear to be disproportionate to their conceivable contribution to the economy. The arguments in favor of persevering with financial innovation and urging regulators to continue to give priority to facilitate innovations should be viewed in this context." Unquote. I would add that the consideration of crypto assets as investment option and the recent discussion in India on retail participation in derivatives must consider Dr. Reddy's wise words and Professor Posner's proposal. I think I'm running out of time, just as well. For the most part, India has charted its own path in social, cultural, religious, and economic affairs over the centuries. It has to have the courage of conviction and awareness of the socio-economic context of a low, middle income and aspiring large population to repeat that feat with respect to the financial sector. Success in this endeavor, which requires us to learn from the mistakes of others, will enable India to be a true Vishwaguru to emerging and advanced economies in ensuring that the financial sector remains the servant of the real economy. Thank you very much.
15 lakh स्कैम है यार ब्लॉक कर
स्कैमर्स से बचने का बेस्ट रिजॉर्ट जस्ट ब्लॉक एंड रिपोर्ट मैसेज प्राइवेटली विद मल्टीपल लेयर्स ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन व्हाट्सएप
We may seem different, but when we get together in celebrations, it's twice the joy, twice the fun. Doers experiences.
Thank you very much. That was really a great exposition and really provokes a large number of thoughts, and I'll keep that for later so that we can get as many people in for this discussion. But before I turn to Ira Dugal, may I ask the other co-chair, Sanjeev, in case he has some quick comments to make before Ira starts shooting. Sanjeev?
Morning, friends, and my own warm welcome to this Financing 3.0 Summit. And what a way to start this morning with a power-packed panel. Not only do we have the Chief Economic Advisor with us, we have the largest bank with us, we have the largest stock exchange with us. We are going to be moderated by one of the largest and oldest news services, not only of India, of the world. And all this organized by the largest industry association that we have over here. So there's no way this can get better. Now, just a few quick points. We are all aware that the financial sector plays a very important role in any economy, and that's no different from ours. Whether it's banks, insurance companies, asset management companies, over the years has helped our economy grow from about a $350 billion economy in the 90s to the $3.5 trillion that it is today. We are also seeing how technology, led by the digital world, led by the India stack, is transforming our economy and is transforming financial services. So there is a lot that is happening, and yet there is a long way to go, especially in our dream towards Viksit Bharat. So let me touch upon a few things. If you look at our rate of domestic credit to GDP, how much is that credit available to us? We are in our mid-30s. The US, the UK are between 70 and 80%. Clearly, we have a long way to go. Of course, we have to make sure that this credit availability comes with the right quality. Next, our biggest growth engine is the MSME sector. It accounts for 30% of our GDP. And yet, the access of formal financial credit is available to less than 15% of MSMEs. And that means there is a gap of 20-25 lakh crore of credit to MSMEs. And this is not according to me, but the Finance Committee report of 2022. Third, we have a large stock market. And everybody over here thinks overnight we can become millionaires. Of course, some are billionaires who become millionaires. But our larger capital markets are still underdeveloped. For example, our bond markets have a long way to go. If you look at our insurance companies, our pension businesses are still very small and are further restricted by limitations on how they can invest for the long term. And fourth, we will need greater harmony between our various regulators to ensure that our policies, while robust, allow for innovation and are aligned. And let me share with you 6 quick thoughts on how I think we should move forward. We are all seeing in the last decade or two that a number of Indian corporates have not only built scale, but have also gone global. We have to ensure that we have many more financial services institutions that can match them in scale, in capability, and in ambition. Next, we need much greater spread of financial services, whether it's banking products, insurance products, mutual funds, others, pension products. We need to make sure that these permeate all across the country, whether for the individual Indian, for the MSMEs. And in these times where the transformation to a greener earth is very important, we need to channelize green financing to them as well. Third, I talked about the fact that we need a larger corporate bond market. And we need to do this by facilitating new products, by bringing in additional industry participants into it. There is no reason why banks should be lending for long-term projects. They are actually ill-suited because there's a mismatch between the assets and liabilities. This has to come from the debt markets. It has to come from insurance and pension money, and it's our responsibility to facilitate that. Fourth, we've seen the massive technological and digital change driven all around the world and in India. And this is where both the government and the regulators have a very fine balance in promoting innovation, but at the same time controlling risk. The digital age has also exposed all of us, whether as corporates or as individuals, to cybersecurity and data security risks. And this is where the government has released their DPDP Act and I hope to see rules around it coming sooner than later so that it helps us create a more robust system. New and emerging technologies also mean greater transformation, but this also requires continuous upskilling in jobs. It requires significant increase in financial literacy and awareness. And this is not the responsibility of only the government. It's the responsibility of each one of us as businesses. If we want to do more business, we want to do well, it's also our responsibility to take others, whether our own employees, whether every citizen, or small businesses that work with us together. So let me conclude by saying that for banks and other financial institutions to play this critical role in taking India forward, it is going to be preeminent that we continue to streamline, harmonize, and align regulations with best practices so that we can reduce the cost of compliance. We should not forget that for our ambitious dream for a Viksit Bharat, this will hinge significantly on the robustness, the scale, and the ambition of the financial services system. Thank you.
In F1, technology moves fast, really fast. That's why they need a technology partner that innovates at the speed of the world's fastest sport. From AR to AI PC to IT infrastructure and services, Lenovo is driving F1 to a faster future for all. Lenovo.
Thanks so much, Sanjeev. And now I really give it to Ira Dugal, as you described, as the largest and the strongest person on the dais to really question this eminent panel.
That's excessively kind, some of the excesses on the financial sector reflecting in that phrase, but thank you so much. So I think we've been set up in a lovely fashion with Dr. Nageshwaran talking about what the financial sector may need to avoid or the follies they may need to avoid, and then by Mr. Bajaj on what direction they need to go in, and I think we'll try